In this lesson, what I'd like to show you is how to use a tool called the Pattern Stamp tool. Now, the Pattern Stamp tool can be used for lots of different things. Primarily, I use it most when I am looking to make some sort of a background graphic, something to use, like I said, mainly for a background. So let's show you how to do that. First, what I'll do is I'm going to go File, New, and let's just do 5 inches by 5 inches at 300, just as a sample document to get going. And then I'm going to double click my hand tool to make it fit on the screen. Now, oftentimes when I use the Pattern Stamp tool, I like to make a new layer, simply because it's nice to have it on a new layer. That way you can edit it and it's off of the background. So I'm going to go down to the bottom of my layer panel and create a new layer. Remember, that's the little square with the lower left-hand corner pulling up. And then let's go find where the Pattern Stamp tool is. So the Pattern Stamp tool is in the second section of your toolbar. I believe yours will say the Clone Stamp tool. It literally looks like one of those old school stamps that you would just stamp on paper. If you press and hold it down, you'll see the Pattern Stamp tool. Go ahead and grab that. Now mine right now is really big. I'm just going to make this smaller. So I want to talk about it real quick. The first thing we need to know about the Pattern Stamp tool is that it's essentially a brush. So we've worked with our brushes a little bit when we did our layer mask, but your brushes are here, the first little drop-down menu. Yours will probably, I'm not even sure if yours have all of these. They're likely going to have these 6 that are kind of, standard round brushes. If you ever want to load more brushes, feel free to do that. The way that you do is if you see in this upper right-hand corner, you have a little settings. If you click on that, it'll open up. And then what it'll have is all of these different, down at the bottom, all of these different types of brushes. So you could click on like dry media brushes and it'll ask, do you want to replace or do you want to append? And if you click append, what it'll do is it will add those brushes to the bottom of your brush presets. So you can get some kind of like cool looking different brushes. And again, this is one of those things kind of like our layer styles where you just have to kind of play around with them until you find ones that you like. So I'm going to come back and pick my brush in a second, but for now, let's move over. The blending mode just has to do with these are other presets that you can use. Most of them have to do with how the light kind of shows through. Again, play around with them. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. You can always change the opacity of your brush. So if you don't want it to be as opaque, you can turn it down. And then this is the drop-down menu I want to talk about here. Yours is probably defaulted to this. It kind of looks like rocks, almost like little gray circles. So these are the different patterns that Photoshop has as presets. So yours right now will probably only show the rock and the kind of rainbow, and then maybe this first like gray square. So just like your brush presets, if you click on that little circle in the upper right hand corner, you're going to see a bunch of different patterns that you can load. So if you want to, you can load all of them. That would be just fine. I'm just going to pick like nature patterns and say append, and it will add some different nature patterns down here. You could maybe try like a texture fill, see what that has. Also hit append. So those are kind of some black and whites. So you can go through and load, the different ones that you can see what they maybe have. There's some different patterns, some kind of cool ones. So you can load as many as you want and just kind of see how that goes. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to scroll to the top and pick that kind of rainbow one just because it's, I guess they call it tie-dye, just because it colorful, and I would probably use it for a background if I was interested in that. So once I have my pattern selected, I'm just going to click off on the menu bar to get that little box to go away. And then I need to go pick my brush. So to start off with, I'll just show you what happens when you grab like a standard hard round brush. And all it does is actually, instead of a color, it paints with the pattern. So you can use a brush like this. It just doesn't give the same effect as what I was kind of hoping for. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to go back to my brush presets, and I'm going to try to pick one that has almost more of a, I'm going to pick this one down here. But you, of course, this is another one of those, just try. Just pick something, try it. You never know what it's going to look like until you do try something new. So I picked one that kind of, I don't know exactly, it's called Oil Medium Wet Flow. We'll see what this looks like. When I do use a pattern to make a background, oftentimes what I'll do is I will make the size of my brush really large. So cranking this way high, and you can see how big my brush is. Oftentimes what I'll do is just use my brackets again. So, oops, close this down. I know, I'm sorry. Ooh, picked it up there. Hang on. I'll use my brackets to make my brush bigger or smaller. And so I just want to kind of see what this does. So I'm just kind of brushing in here. I'm just clicking, I'm not actually holding. And it kind of gives like that, almost like a feathered look. So that could be, you can see that could be kind of a cool background to use if you were interested in something like that. Let's try something else. So I'm going to just delete my layer and add a new one again. And I'm going to pick a different pattern just so we can see some of the difference. I can't really tell what some of these are. So it's kind of trial and error. And it can be kind of fun to see what you do. So let's try this and see how this goes. What does this happen? So this is a really, really light brush. I don't know if this is quite what I like. So I'm just going to back up. And again, try. The biggest thing is that you can always start again. You can always create a new layer. You can always pick a different pattern and a different brush. You just never know until you try. So I encourage you to just see what you can come up with. Be creative. And let's try this one. Okay, that's kind of cool. So I like when I do the pattern stamp to kind of click instead of drag, because that gives me a little bit more control about how things look. And then you could always, like tone it down and do, some more intense spots. And then you have a background that you can create because, as I was saying, when you try to find backgrounds online, a lot of times those backgrounds are not at the same high quality graphic, that 300 ppi, that we need our pictures to be. And so when you create something like this from scratch in Photoshop, you have the control to make your own graphic. And of course, the other cool thing we could do here is if you didn't want a white background, let's just show you, you can make another new layer. And on this layer, we could change it to, I'll just leave it as blue. I would never do this, but we'll fill it with the blue background, and you can get something like that. So there's lots of options. Just play around and have some fun and see what you can create, honestly. That's the best advice that I have for you. when you're testing out the pattern stamp tool. So that is how you do it. And if you have any questions, just take a little rewatch through the video.